Hi everyone, I'm with a very special guest. He is a lecturer and camp master, I'm told, on the GE expedition. It's Gerard Baker from GE Adventures. Thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
Your job title, lecturer and camp master, what does that mean?
Well, on board the vessel we have an educational program. So what we do is take time when we're crossing the Drake's Passage, or we have chance in the evening to educate our guests in the history, the biology, the ecosystem of where we are, be it Arctic or Antarctic. And then as camp master, I look after the equipment and the process of camping with our guests on the Antarctic continent.
So we'll come back to that because I want to talk about where you camp and whether it's dangerous to camp in Antarctica. But let's start with the ship itself. So tell us a little bit about the ship, because most people won't be aware of what an expedition ship maybe consists of.
Yeah, it's a relatively small ship, 130 or so passengers, about 58 crew and officers. And then we have an expedition team which consists of around a dozen to 15 specialists, some generalists as well. And we create a team that does everything off board. So we drive Zodiacs, take people ashore for landings, and as well have, as I was explaining, the educational program on board.
Okay, so the average length of the cruise down in Antarctica would be how long?
Between 10 and 19 days.
Okay.
So we do the short Antarctic Classic, slightly longer Antarctic Circle, where we try to get down to that magical 66.33. And then the longer trip is the South Georgia, Falklands and Antarctic Peninsula combined, which is our longest trip.
And that's the 19...
Yes, the 19 days.
Which looks amazing.
It is incredible.
So one of the questions I'm sure that some people will have will be weather conditions. So it's not a year-round program. And is the weather something that makes it choppy in the sea, shall we say?
Well, the ship operates at both poles. It just has a relocation, sometimes relocation cruise. And the conditions in Antarctica are typically colder and more choppy, because we have to cross the Drake's Passage out of Ushuaia a day and a half. In our ship's case, we're quite a quick ship. Okay. And we're also lucky it's quite a stable ship. So we don't often have hairy drakes. I've had more flat calm drakes than I have had rough ones, which is great.
Which is encouraging.
It is encouraging. But we also have to be aware on board that many of our guests haven't been at sea much before. So a lot people do take seasickness medication and sleep a lot of that trip, which is good. And then in terms of temperature, it's rarely below freezing during the day. Okay. And obviously everyone gets that expedition parka and comes with, they bring lots of hand warmers, which they then give us because they don't need them, because it's actually warmer than you think. And when it's sunny and it's not windy, you could sunbathe if it wasn't for the lack of ozone, so it can be warm.
Wow. And the season is which typical months?
Our season in the Antarctic is longer than most ships, so we'll run from middle of October through to nearly the end of March. Okay. By which time it's getting quite dark, and we're at the tail end of the animals, the young animals fledging and going to sea, the penguins particularly. So. Okay,
and so let's talk about the animals, because that's why I guess most people go. So what kind of things are they going to see? Penguins would be the obvious one, but
yeah, in the Antarctic certainly you'll see lots of penguins. Different species depending on where we go, because you have some northern penguins, some subantarctic penguins like the kings on South Georgia, and then you get some southern penguins like the Adelie and the emperor. And we probably won't see many emperors a year, but we'll see lots of Adelies, and then chinstraps, gentoos, kings, Magellanics, rockhoppers, macaronis. So quite a range, and then obviously the albatrosses, the big seabirds, Wilson storm petrel, the little ones. And we spend quite a bit of time educating the guests about the animals, obviously. People do come wanting to get their pictures. We get lots of keen bird watchers. Right. And our ship gets involved in raising money for the rat eradication and conservation projects on South Georgia. We raise hundreds of thousands of pounds for that. And so we, year to year, see how that's developing and how the animal life is coming back. So in the case of some birds, like the South Georgia pipit, which is really small, one of the great things of the past few years has been seeing all the fundraising we've been doing going into bringing those animals back into habitat, which is very exciting.
Yeah, very exciting. So in terms of landscapes that people are going to see, is it all icebergs and ice, or are there other things that you can see?
Well, the Antarctic Peninsula is narrow and very heavily glaciated. So just as any historic explorer will find, it's very hard to find places to land.
Right.
So we spend a lot of time on islands offshore, where it's where the animals find space to nest.
Okay.
So that's we're often offshore, maybe with a view to the peninsula that might be half a mile or 2 miles, in an archipelago, which is really where we're sailing on the west of the peninsula, and that's quite sheltered. And there are lots of really beautiful sites and some historic sites that we visit. Historic huts, for example. The British have a post office down at Port Lockroy, which we always visit.
Really? Wow.
And we buy our stamps and send our postcards home. Penguin
Gosh.
Post Office. So there are, and then of course in South Georgia, there's a lot more vegetation. So we later in the season, I organise some botany walks and trips there, just to vary it really. So we try and make as much of the landscape and look at landscape processes when the ice is melted back a little bit.
So back to the camp master. Where do you do the camp trips?
We'll camp usually down on the Antarctic Peninsula, typically at 3 or 4 different sites. We don't always choose the same site because we don't want to impact any one site. But we'll take half the guests usually on shore for a camp, and that involves zodiacking all the gear, the camp, the tents, sleeping bags, all the people's personal gear. We don't cook and eat on land, we can't do that. But we'll sleep overnight and usually organise some walks, some photography opportunities. And then in the morning I come back to the ship and I clean out the camping toilets, which is my favourite job.
How lovely.
And have a good shower and then have breakfast. And then we can carry on to the next place. But it's an opportunity for people to be at one with the Antarctic in a smaller group, to enjoy the peace and quiet of a hopefully beautiful evening.
And does it get colder in the evening?
Inevitably, clear nights can be -3 or 4 in the
But not
summer,
too
but
cold.
not super cold.
Okay.
No, we look forward to it snowing actually, and then it's warmer. And it's
really?
quieter. It sort of damps down the noise.
So you mentioned South Georgia and the Falkland Islands as kind of
Yes.
additional bits. What are they like? What's the experience on
The Falklands is an incredible wildlife destination. It's really underrated. We go to one place where there's 5 different penguin species, the Neck on Saunders Island. And then we'll have a day in Stanley, and that's more of a cultural experience, meeting the Falklanders. And they're very friendly. It's a great place to go. And we tend to get lots more Brits on that trip, for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
And a slightly older crowd because it's a longer trip and young people haven't got that much holiday. But then South Georgia is unique, really. A combination of the whaling stations, the old whaling stations. Shackleton's heritage, of course, is there.
Yeah.
And it's a very big mountainous island, 9,500 feet high, 100 miles long, very beautiful northern shore, and that's where we find the concentrations of wildlife that people really get excited about. 100, 200,000 king penguins in a single colony, and that's awe-inspiring, and we never get tired of that. And the guests just get blown away.
And I was going to say, because we're running out of time, but I was going to say that you have the best job in the world. How exciting that you get to explore this part of the world.
It is just the best job.
And do guests add on in South America, or is it tend to be a standalone journey for many?
For younger people, it tends to be a standalone because it's not the cheapest trips. But we tend to find the people that travel the furthest add on the most. So we get lots of Australians that will be doing a 2 or 3 month trip, and they'll add on Patagonia, Amazon, that whole experience. It's amazing.
Okay. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.